everybody. I was having a little bit of technical difficulties, but I want to say hi and say welcome to Be Harvey Conversations. I am Byron Harvey most days of my life, and we're so happy to have you here at Be Harvey Conversations. We engage in awesome perspectives, demonstrate vulnerability, different perspectives, advocate for change, and ultimately generate conversations that benefit God's people. So if you could do me a favor, go like and share, comment, or if you get to watch this a little bit later, feel free to jump on. We're so excited that you're here. Today, I'm honored to have a very special guest because this is Mental Health Awareness Month, and this month I want to close out the month talking about various things that concern us in our community. So I brought a special friend. I reached out to him a few um, months ago and so excited to have him. I'm honored to have with me Mr. Jamal Nesbitt. He's a therapist who will be sharing his insight on mental health awareness among men, especially Black men. And so let's welcome him. All right, let's bring him on. Thank you. Thank you for joining us today, Jamal. How are you?
I'm doing well, doing well. It's good to be here. Thank you for having me on. Really just, I'm loving the energy, loving the platform. Just excited to share and be a part.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. I am excited about this. We had stepped back from doing many of these lives for a minute,
Wow.
and now we're bringing it back, and we're starting with mental health awareness, a topic that's so close to my heart. And I always say it, a few months ago, I was dealing with a friend who I got to share my story with. A lot of people don't know I actually had an emotional breakdown back in 2011.
Mm-hmm.
And it changed my perspective on mental health and mental health awareness.
Yeah.
Ever since then, I've been an advocate. So now I get to advocate even more. So I'm excited to have you. Thank you again for being with us.
No problem. No problem. Thank you.
Yes, I'll start with my first question. What made you interested in studying psychology and becoming a therapist?
Well, interestingly so, I, my initial goal wasn't to be a therapist. That wasn't my initial goal. And I think it kind of ties into the theme as we talk about mental health awareness. My initial goal was to move into law school. So when I first got into college, I didn't even know what my major was going to be. And what I did, I took psychology because I believe that there is a psychological component to law. And what I wanted to do, I had a goal of, finishing psychology and going into law school and kind of getting to the point to where I can create something that benefits the community. It kind of benefited the people because it's some things that can't be understood intellectually, have to be understood culturally. And I
Mm,
felt like there was some psychology that was missing from it. And interestingly so, one of the things that ended up happening is as I'm going through the process of going through the process of going through the process, it was, I had people who seen things in me. And I think that's a big component of it. People that seen things in me was kind of like, hey, I think it'd be really good at this. I think it'd be really good at that. And I'm like, hey, I'm not really into all that. This is what I want to do. I want to change laws. I want to build things. It's not too late to do that. But that was kind of my focus. And
wow.
as I was looking at it, I had some strongholds I was battling with because at the point where I was at, the reason I wanted to go to law school was from a place of, hey, I'm going to do this. It had some anger, some different things, and it was a lot of built up stuff. And as it built up, I told myself I'll be able to make a bunch of money and kind of get back to where I want to be and do all these things. And that's not the plan that God had for me. So as I graduated, I actually registered for my LSAT, and I registered for the LSAT, and it was 2 weeks that I was supposed to, you know, um, 2 weeks until graduation, and a week before I graduated, I had an advisor come to me and say, hey, we actually from Bethune-Cookman University, and he said, well, we have this program. We want to grandfather some people in. We have a mental health counseling program, and we'll grandfather you in. And I'm like, give me time to think about it. because I figured if I
Wow.
can do that, I can still go ahead and do the law thing. And depending on where I'm at, God will lead me. And a week after graduation, I was in a master's program on counseling.
That is crazy. And
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I think a lot of times we think people just automatically flow into their career. They just immediately go into the thing.
Yeah.
Um, but to see that journey or hear about that journey, I think is just one inspiring. Because a lot of times, a man sets his course, but the Lord orders his steps. He knows kind of where we're going. So man, I'm well, thank you for being a therapist,
Thank you.
Yes, come on and be grandfather Ed.
Yeah.
um my next question, we're gonna jump right into the thing. We're gonna jump into this day.
Yeah. Yeah.
uh we know that the mental health stigma and barriers to seeking help can be especially prevalent among men. From your experience, what are some of the unique challenges men face when it comes to addressing mental health issues?
I think it kind of ties into even the origin and how I got into counseling. Is it's that belief that you have to know how to do it when you start it. You have to be the best at it, very competitive, or that stigma that you have to be great. And I was kind of stuck in that space, honestly, when I first got into it because I didn't know how to protect my own mental health. I would just keep
Mm,
pouring out and feeling like, hey, that's what men do. You don't have to be there. You have to be the rock, and you have to support those around you. So one day, you give back to the community and you do all these big things. So that was a lot of the mindset that was driving me to law school. I was like, it paid more. I can change laws. I can help people. I can pull people up. But I didn't realize that just because I was 18 and I left the house, we use that thing. Oh, well, you a man.
right, right.
How being a man is. That's just being an adult, and there's a difference. There's a difference. Boys turn to men, but naturally, but men is becoming a man. It showed me that it's different. I'm an adult, but as a man, it's a role that we expect, and there's some wisdom that we need in order to move forward. And I think
Yeah.
one of the stigmas that really held me back was the idea that I had to do certain things, and my success had to look a certain way. So it
Mm,
really pulled me away from trying things and seeking out help because I thought that it made me look weak. I'm like, oh man, I can't do that. I gotta muscle through it. I gotta muscle through it and power through and do this and do that. So that I think that's one of the unique challenges is powering through, the need to power through. And when you get to a certain point, as I got to a certain point spiritually, I understood that it's not for me to power through anything. There's many people who are more experienced who want to support and help and guide me through a process to help me learn how to help people in the right way. You know, um,
yeah,
so that's kind of what some of the stigmas that I've been seeing. Just hold and just stay strong, put your back straight, and move
yeah,
forward.
yeah. And I think also that I think it creates a false reality, you
Yes.
know, that false reality of I've got to power through, I got to push through.
Yeah.
I call it sharing with a friend who's writing, call it the John Henry complex.
Right. Right. Right.
Like we celebrate the fable of John Henry, but we don't realize that he worked himself to death.
Right. Right.
you
Right.
know, and we just smiling and reading it to children that that a black man just worked himself to death, and it ingrains in your mind that that's the only way to be.
Right.
It's the only way to exist, and it's the only way to become. So, I mean, thank you for that, because that is really a barrier that so many men face, so many men encounter on a regular basis. What in the world we're looking at more specifically at the Black community, do you find that there are additional cultural factors or societal pressures that make it even more difficult for Black men to prioritize their mental well being?
Well, when we talk about societal factor and cultural factors, I think every culture has their challenges, but one thing that I want to identify is that culture of which it's not to marginalize any group, but I think within the black culture there's many cultures. So I think that's one of the most complex pieces is to realize that we have to learn our culture, learn our own family, learn our own cultural standpoint within the black culture.
Mm,
I think sometimes we have a tendency to gravitate toward what's the most popular versus the black culture because the black culture is made up of numerous things. For instance, me being from the islands, I'm Bahamian and Haitian, been in America, lived in South Florida, all the way up to, Tennessee, been in Virginia, and there's different components. And I think one thing that makes it difficult with those cultural factors is we don't realize how much impact history has on us. For instance, I may have some being from the Bahamas may have some English influences. Being from
hmm
the Haitian side, there may be some French influence. There's also a big Native American population in the Bahamas as well, which but some people don't know that's where Christopher Columbus actually landed.
Right.
So, I think culturally, one of the big factors is group mindset. Of
hmm
this is how it should be, and if it's not this way, then it's not black. And it's like,
mm,
let's take a step back and really understand that we have different hereditary issues. Some of these things that we work through, for instance, depression can be hereditary, right?
yeah.
And it can change based on the culture that we live in. Um, Anger can be hereditary. Um,
hmm
Levels of patience can be hereditary based on the chemicals that your brain produces. So we have to look at regionally, see where we at culturally, see our family history. Um, Ask the elders some questions, so we can get
Yeah.
some more information. So I think that's a really unique cultural factor is due to things that happened historically, going from slavery, all of these multiple faceted things. I think it really affect what we understand about ourselves, even in today's age. And I think some
hmm
people kind of afraid to go and look in those areas, so they just say, you know what, I'm gonna deal with it like every one size fits all. And one
One
size
size
fits
fits
all was
all.
what I started adapting was, hey, you get grown, you leave the house, you make some money, and you go back.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
hold on now, do we know the temperament necessary to do that? Do we know what's the mindset necessary to do that? Do we know culturally how to adapt to these things? Coming from Florida and moving to well, even coming from Miami, they said Miami is on place. Being in
Yeah.
Miami and moving to Daytona is like a whole different world. You know,
And I think there's that even the idea that culture, there's culture, then there's subculture.
right,
And then even there's individual groups. And I think, like even like you said, the group mindset, understanding that maybe one monolith is not the storyline for everybody.
right, right,
Even for me, I remember back in 2011, my dad was at the hospital with me, and they said, "Has this ever happened in your family before?" And he said, "Oh yeah, my grandmother was sitting in the hospital. I just didn't know why." And I'm like, "We just now figured this out."
right.
It's like, are you serious?
Mm,
But a lot of times it's something that we don't talk about. And then we also create, sometimes we create um, our own stereotype, if you know what I mean.
right,
We create ideologies that are sometimes not even beneficial um,
exactly,
to us as an individual, and we embrace um, what we see on the media, what we've learned in subculture, what we've learned in small pockets.
right.
So I think what you said is it's so powerful. Looking at the group, look at those groups, and then we need to deal with the stereotypes that sit inside those groups.
Yes, yes. Because
Yeah,
yeah, that's a very powerful message there. I can
man.
on that one. Go.
I'm listen. You feel free to expound because I mean I think people really need to hear that.
Yeah.
Um, my story as a black person is not the story someone else's story.
Right.
Um, like for example, different cultures. I went to TSU, but my friends at Hampton lived a whole different life.
Right. Right.
um, even
Right.
my friends at Morehouse, totally different culture. Um, and they're both HBCUs. They're both a
Yeah.
part of this expression of blackness.
Right.
And blackness is a interesting term because sometimes it can be a cookie. It can be a cookie cutter.
Yeah. And I think you hit the nail on the head with when you talked about the HBCUs, like me going to Bethune-Cookman.
Yep.
One thing that I recognize, you go to this age historically black college and you see all of these different people from all over the region coming around, and you start to identify something like, oh man, at first it feels like, wow, this is how everybody is.
Yeah.
You realize you're dealing with a small percentage of people. Like when you look at the percentage of people that go to college, first off,
Hmm.
the percentage of people that graduate, let alone in African American or black culture, however you want to slice it,
Yeah.
start to look at, oh well, this is a norm for me. It's like me and my wife, we laugh all of the time. I was like, we know so many people from so many different places, but
Yeah.
it's a slice. It's just a slice because a lot of people have been to college just because we've been to college. But that's still
Matriculated.
yeah,
Matriculated.
it's like going down the pipeline, and a lot of great singers, and we know a lot of great singers, but it's like how many people really interact at this level of people. Uh,
Man.
and I remember being younger, and one of the cultural norms that I had, and I thought about this as an adult. I remember being maybe 6, 7, 8, someplace around there, being young, and in my innocence, I remember we was playing outside, and there was this guy that he used to always see him through the hood. He used to come through the hood, and we used to be outside playing. We used to dig in the dirt, put dirt piles together and all of this stuff. And I remember this was in the '90s, and I remember he used to always say, "Hey, look over here for me. Look over here for me. And just watch this spot for me." And I would always just stand outside. I never told my parents about it. He would always come, and every time I looked, that he asked me what I see, he would bring me like a Star Crunch, a honey bun, and all of these other things, right?
Hmm.
I didn't know him. I don't even know his name, but he would always do it. And come to find out, I didn't realize, he was robbing the store. He was stealing from the store. And I was a lookout. I'm just
Yeah.
normal.
Oh my gosh.
And I look at it, I'm like, man, I was thinking about it. And I remember one day we were sitting outside and I was talking, me and my little brother, and I was like, we were talking about what we want to be when we get older. And I just
Hmm.
a casual conversation. I remember saying, when I grow up and after I get out of jail and after I do this, and after, when I get shot one day, that's how
Right.
it's like I just expected it. I'm gonna get locked up one day because that's what
Yes.
I see. I'm gonna get shot one day. Hopefully I live through it and this is what I'm gonna do. So I spoke in those ways. And now thinking about it with so much conditioning,
Yes.
I was like,
Exactly.
this is going to happen. This is going to happen. Hopefully, I make it through it, and this is what I'm going to be, and this is how I have to do it because this is how I see it's been done.
Yes. And
Even
I
yeah,
and I had to jump in there
oh, yeah,
because I'm everybody that knows me knows I'm a church boy.
yeah,
But I'm that one church boy that was more like Peter.
yeah, yeah.
So what'll happen is you'll catch church Byron, but then you'll catch
mm,
another person. I didn't realize that I was conditioned in that
mm, mm,
because I would see leaders who were one way one day and then the next day somebody else.
yeah, yeah.
And you start talking like those people.
Right.
And I didn't mean to interrupt you, but like a light bulb went off. It was an aha moment. I'm like conditioned to believe negative things will happen to you.
Mm, right. And that's powerful because we have this rule that we feel like if you do things that's not good, you do everything that you do is in that same mindset. And if you
Hmm.
do things that's good, everything you do is also in that mindset. But we're human. we have a balance of, there's people that can do things that someone may consider heinous, and they
Mm-hmm.
may have a part about them that represents the light. Like they may be a very giving person. There can be also somebody that's very we may consider, oh man, this person is righteous or whatever, whatever. And they may have a spirit of slothfulness or
Yes.
anger or anger streak on the other side. So it's just to say that we're all human. And once we start to interact with people and understand that there's no perfect person, and we can now break free from those mental chains, we can start to look in different areas, experience different things, experience different cultures. And I think that's kind of what helped me. God just
Man.
put me in places to see new things. And I'm grateful for it. But and I know that's a long answer, but we're talking
No, but like
mostly, you know.
I was glad to hear that story because a lot of time people don't um they see where an individual may be now,
Mm,
but you don't know where they came from.
right, right.
I think I always share that story. I was like, yeah, I was in church, but I saw drug deals happen with
Yeah,
preachers.
right.
You know what I'm saying? I've had a gun pointed at me before. People
Mm,
people wouldn't know that,
yeah.
and so well, some people that really don't know. But
Right.
anyway, they can kind of tell. But anyway, it's okay. Um, God still working. But anyway, but like I think one of those things people don't they one of those things that kind of comes with being elevated out of is that sometimes people don't realize that you've been through.
Right, right.
um and you don't and for a lot of us, I was blessed. My dad was a single parent. People don't know A lot of people don't know that my dad had to raise me by himself.
Mm,
And um my dad was also the community dad,
yes, yes, yeah.
so he was the positive male figure for me, yes. While I was sometimes missing the maternal figure,
Right,
but
right.
for a lot of people, he was the only man that they saw.
Mm.
And which kind of leads to my question, what role does positive male role models, black role models play um, in mental health and mental health awareness?
I think it plays a big part. That's where we go back to conditioning. Right.
Hmm.
We have that big argument, nature versus nurture.
Yeah.
And one thing that I found out is they're both equally important. They're both equally important. For instance, I come from a background where I have a lot of siblings. It's 13 of us, right? So we have,
Come on, big family.
yeah, I've been blessed to see a lot of different things. So my dad, he's a pastor. He's an apostle actually. So I grew up in the church as well. But I always had someone there, at least one person, that I can look at from a distance and see their lifestyle or just the way that they handle things, just from a distance. I had uncles that I've been really close with and been able to communicate with closely. And I remember there was a point to where I got a chance to live with both parents.
Hmm.
I got a chance to live with my grandparents at a point. I got a
Wow.
chance to live with my mom by herself and my dad by herself. Um, I lived with my dad in the Bahamas in a whole different culture. I lived with my mom
Wow.
for a lot of there. My grandmother on the Bahamas, I stayed with her. And I got a chance to do that. So I got a chance to see a lot of different male role models. But it's important that in our communities we learn how much and how important our roles are. And there's an old
Mm.
African proverb that says, "Where there's no enemy within, the enemy outside could do us no harm."
Wow.
And I think sometimes what happens is we don't see the value in ourselves. We don't know that people are looking up to us. And I used to say that a lot. Hey, I'm not a role model, so
Right.
don't look up to me. I say that all the time. I just try to take away the leadership and push it.
Deflate, deflate, deflate.
It's like, it don't work. You don't get to choose who look up to you.
Right.
Same way you don't get to choose who you teach. You know,
Mm.
they say like we like to teach people when we're ready, but they say when the student is ready, the master will appear.
Oh, stop right there. Go, go, go. Repeat that.
So
Repeat that.
the
because
student,
that's a quotable.
the master will appear. So sometimes the master want to be ready. We want to teach people, and we're ready because we learned a lesson, and it can push people away. So
Mm,
I think that's something where it can be a burden. It's kind of like the burden of truth. It's when we leave and go and get information and come back enlightened on whatever we feel that we have, and we come back trying to push on people. It's like, no, that's not how you do it.
yeah.
You need to. I think it's a technique that will help as far as if we get together and start to teach each other how to teach and what's the mannerism of teaching. You teach when the student is ready, and
Mm-hmm.
also people are always learning from you, even if you don't want to be learned from. So I think
Mm.
it's a very important place in that community.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. People are all. Wait a minute. People are always learning from you, even when you don't want to be learned from.
Right, right.
I mean, put that on a T-shirt somewhere.
Oh yeah, and it's deep, right?
Man, I just shared at my church's Bible study this week. They were talking about the fruit of the spirit and all that stuff. And I was like, I brought it up and I said, what happens a lot of times is we love the gifts, we love to be talented, we love platforms. And regardless of who you are and where you are in life, it's amazing that we'll choose giftedness over fruitfulness.
Mm, mm,
And we would rather have gifts than fruit. But fruit is really the experience people have with you
right,
after you. When they eat of your tree, what do they get?
right. Hey,
And so when you said, man, I said, man, I should have had him earlier this week. It was, and you take up,
you know,
man,
I'm there for you. I always like to be around the campfire because that's a statement that I learned from the mentor. Is no tree eats its own fruit, right? No tree eats its own fruit. So
man, you should have been there Wednesday.
yeah,
This
look,
ain't even fair.
just invite me. I come through.
Man, I got to reteach it. I'm gonna act like everything I said last week, it was good, but I got somebody to do a little bit better than I can. Drop
I'll
that
tell you.
quote anyway.
Yeah, it's important because we do that. We build these fruits and we want to keep them. It's like no,
Yeah.
the tree don't even grow the fruits for themselves. The tree grows the fruit because the tree is stationary and it can't physically move. So it needs
Mm,
something for somebody to carry its gift. So that it uses all legs and the bird's wings and everything else to get the message out. And I think it's important that we understand that when we talk about role models and we talk about people that we can look up to, understand that everything we do is for someone else.
everything.
Even when we try to make it about ourselves, someone can receive it and it can hurt them, but they may not receive it willingly, but it's still for someone else.
It's man, you're dropping gems, and I think there's this thing um that I think happened a few years ago. I was preaching somewhere, and I'm like, man, I'm gonna do this revival. I told these people I'm coming. Anybody that knows me, I'm the most non-church going church person you've ever met. Every Sunday, my pastor day, he don't even want to be here this Sunday. Anyway, I'm terrible, awful, yeah, awful person. Anyway, but I was at this revival. I'm like, I'm here because I promised these people I would do this revival. And, I know the Lord's going to do something just because that's just who he is. And so I'm here. I'm like, all right, let me fix my heart. And I was like, well, just do something to inspire me to even minister to your people because I don't even want to be up here wrong.
Mm.
And they said, we're going to have the introduction. Now, I'm so tuned out that I didn't even hear them say the person's name.
Wow. Wow.
It was one of my friends
Wow.
who was, I just say this because I don't even want to call his business out like that.
Yeah.
Thug of the year.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And he was like, man, I've been knowing this man since we was kids. And he's always been a good dude. And I looked up, I'm like, you've been knowing me. And I yelled out the man's name. I said, I know this ain't, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Because you don't, like you said, you don't know
Mm.
who you're teaching.
Right.
Didn't even check the invitation. My management looked at it and I just showed up. I just here I am.
Mm.
I'll make sure I read the next time because it may be a funeral or something, and then I walk in with a surprise. But
Right.
anyway, but I think you never know who you're inspiring. You
Yeah.
never know who you're being a blessing to, and
Mm.
then two, you never know what someone's going through.
Right. Right.
I think we are always waiting for big moments to inspire people, not realizing that it's the little moment in the hallway. It's the interaction at the restaurant. Um, and which leads to my question: toxic masculinity. It's the word we've been using.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a term, not a word, because it's two
Yeah.
words, but it's okay. Toxic masculinity is a term we've been kind of hearing. We see it on social media and in that search part. Anyway, for a while, the norms of suppressing emotion and appearing strong can take a toll. How do you approach helping men, especially black men, unlearn those harmful mindsets and feel more comfortable being vulnerable?
Mm. Well, in that space, that's a term that I've been tackling and working through, right? And the reason being is, especially as a being in a mental health space, it's
Mm-hmm.
one of those things to where doctors always say, don't go Googling your symptoms. You'll think you got everything, right? Going to doctor, Google.
Yeah.
And with the term, clinically, it's not a term that we recognize as a term, right? So I had to start thinking and deep diving and understanding how to help in the in an effective way. And one thing that I came up with when we talk about helping people to be vulnerable and unlearning behaviors is understanding that everything starts in a thought and then it affects your feelings that translates into actions. So the principle and the thoughts that we have shapes us. And I
Man,
challenge that term as far as what is toxic masculinity, right?
what is it?
Yeah, versus toxic femininity. And I start
Mm,
to challenge that and be like, hold on. Is a behavior specifically regulated to a specific gender? Or can we
man.
all be undesirable sometimes? Can we all have a sense of lack of control with our emotions? And sometimes
Mm,
we have to call it what it is, not what we feel like. It's kind of like when you talk to somebody and you get upset and be like, you never listen to me.
right.
Really, what we mean is, hey, when I try to speak, sometimes you interrupt me and I don't feel like you understand me. We don't mean that they
Mm,
never listen to me. And sometimes we
right.
throw these things out because it's the fastest way that we know how to communicate a feeling.
Mercy.
So when we say toxic masculinity, I think it's important for men and women to understand. I know we're focusing on men right now, but just to understand that you're you're not masculinity isn't toxic, neither is femininity.
Yeah.
What's unhealthy is not having emotional regulation or not having a or isolation maybe unhealthy. And sometimes I may say, oh man, he's so standoffish. You don't care about anyone's emotions but itself.
Right.
You may be standoffish. We build these defense mechanisms to protect ourselves. So let's say, for instance, as you were being a kid, let's say you always went to your parent and you expressed yourself to your parent and your parent just blew you off. They didn't address your
Yeah.
emotion. Get out of my face. Stay out of my face. Stop talking to me like that. You so annoying. I just need to go to bed, play the game, go get something to eat, get a popsicle, go play outside. You inside again. Just keep going and keep going and keep going. There's a saying, age to where kids learn exploration
Mm-hmm.
versus understanding what is the balance. It's kind of like you learn how far you can go
Right.
without actually getting in trouble or being in harm's way. The thing that builds the confidence in those kids is when they go far, the parent gives them a line. Hey, it's a healthy pullback. You
Right.
can swim in the pool, but don't go to the deep end.
Mm,
They teach them versus saying, you're not going to the pool, you can't swim. Ain't nobody in there to watch you. They say, you know what? I'm gonna take 30 minutes. I'm gonna watch you. I'm gonna let you try. I'm gonna let you learn. I'm gonna let you be comfortable. I'm gonna let you have fun instead of be afraid.
Wow.
And sometimes what happens is we get to a place where we get so fearful, and we never grew through the stage. We never had the ability to explore. We never tried new things. We didn't feel safe when we was in our safe spaces. Now it's no safe space. We have to create our safe space, but we don't know how to.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say
Man.
we, I'm speaking broadly, not to marginalize black people in any way. I'm not saying black
Yeah.
people are men. Just saying when we're in those mindsets of feeling as if, hey, we can't do it, we can't do this. So not lack of emotional regulation. Lack of emotional regulation would look like, hey, a baby's crying in the crib, parent doesn't pick the kid up. The baby
Yeah.
has a wet diaper, the diaper's on for 6 hours. Neglect and emotional neglect, which it doesn't mean that someone is cursing you out. Emotional neglect can be not tending to your emotions and providing safety.
So even when we like, so maybe the term is that you've created bad boundaries
Yes, yes. Bad boundaries.
versus saying maybe the way you engage is toxic.
Yes, yes. It
Um,
changes when, because as a man you can't escape being masculine. So
I don't know how you would do it.
and as a female you can't escape being feminine. So what happens is sometimes people do something and it reminds them of something that they think is toxic. I can't even discipline my kids. I don't always want to do it because they're gonna hate me and people are gonna look at me as a tyrant, and I don't want to be that type of dad. Now
right.
they're looking at discipline as toxic, and they don't want to discipline. That the kid becomes unruly.
And
You-
you've created this space
Yeah.
because you didn't take the time to discern and really analyze something my dad I, my dad is one of my best pals on the planet. But he's always one of the most interesting thinkers I've ever met. He does not think like the baby boomer he is.
Right.
He's determined he's not. Um, hey dad, if you're
Yeah.
out there. But he addressed something with me one day um, because we were talking about this term, quote unquote, toxic masculinity. And he asked the question, he was like, is it masculinity because of what the world says it is, or what culture says it is, or what pop culture says it is, or is this identity based off of what you've seen previously?
Right.
And he was like, how do you discern whether this is the masculine or the feminine? And I think for me personally, what I've noticed is that that's what spurs off negative connotations. Well,
Mm.
they're acting feminine. I was like, well, they couldn't act like something that they aren't necessarily.
Right.
I was like, that is based off of your previous knowledge and your subgroup that believes that.
Mm.
Um, so then a thing would become toxic because it would be outside of its norm
Right. Right.
versus, or it doesn't match the moment right now.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's powerful because that's kind of what happens is the subgroups or the groups, they put it on you, right?
Yes.
It's kind of, you talked about social media and pop culture. The rise of social media can can create subgroups within subgroups.
Yes.
So when you look at things like, I call it Dr. Pop, right? Like pop culture, they create these doctor terms, right?
Right.
Because we understand that there are individuals in relationships that may have unhealthy relationships, like men and women on both sides, physical violence, verbal abuse.
Right.
There are things that happen. And I think sometimes what can happen is we can trauma bond. And as we trauma bond, we sometimes we can build these terms. It's easy to latch on to the term, especially if we felt it, if we didn't know how to explain it, if no one listens to us, if we don't have a group that we can go to, if we don't feel like anyone's hearing us, that we hear the term and it sums up everything that he's like, oh, this is the thing that I've seen. I've seen verbal abuse. I've seen domestic violence. I've seen these things. I've been in relationships where someone would just have sex with me and not speak to me ever
Yep.
again
Yep.
and do it over and over to people and act as if it's not happening. And then they call it
Right.
gaslighting, right? Which
Yep.
that term is also built off of pop culture. But that's a whole different thing. We'll talk about that. I don't remember the movie, but it was in a movie and it turned into something really big. But
Because we create our terms.
right,
Each so I know we're more in psychology right now, but even in sociology, we create the terms for our group.
yeah, yeah,
And so a lot of times, you have these ideologies, like, for example, I don't mean to jump into theology too much, like soul ties.
mm, mm.
I could take you through a Bible all night and all day, and that word is not in there.
Right, right.
It was never in there. That is something someone created
Mm. Yep.
to explain a thing in the context of their group.
Right,
Now, whether that's up to trajectory, if that's how you perceive. Um, but is it possible to form bonds with people that are long lasting? Very much so.
right, right.
That impact your further relationships, yes. So I think I'm glad you brought that up. That we've created all of these terms, and special prayer for all the therapists who have to deal with all of these terms
Yes.
that people are coming up with, um, and having to unpack. So
Tongue has
yes,
power.
huh?
The tongue
Say that
has
one more time.
power. The tongue has power, and
Yes.
we lock ourselves into these spaces unconsciously. It's kind of
Mm-hmm.
like the story of the ugly duckling. You call the duck ugly, the duck believes it's ugly. We call ourselves ugly or dumb or stupid, or we repeat these terms while unconsciously being connected to this group. If we
Man.
cut a group, now we feel like we're that, but it's like we. And when I say we, once again, not to marginalize, I'm just speaking broadly.
Yes.
A person, just in case because the person can sometimes look and put themselves into a group and live vicariously through the group mentally, although their actions may not even represent anything of the group. They may not or perform the same actions, but they feel like they can be a part of it sometimes.
So is it possible that a lot of times some of the emotional and mental struggles, especially that men and women, but
Mm-hmm.
men face specifically, I know in most of our and many of our contexts,
Right, right.
um, is that um, they have abided by the context of the group
Yeah.
or the subgroup and not developed their own emotional and mental boundaries for what they believe, and what would be mentally healthy for them.
Yes, that's very possible, especially when we talk about subgroups, and even as we talk about black men or minority groups. Sometimes a person can connect to the underdog story
Mm,
and attach themselves to the things of the underdog. But when you view yourself as an underdog, it puts you in a certain mindset already, as if, hey, well, I'm losing. It doesn't mean that there isn't things that happen historically that can make a person weary or make a person take a step back. But when you talk about the complexities of trying to start with role models and break out of these social norms, they say as we think, as a man thinking his heart, so is he, right?
yep.
So if we start to look at how mental the thoughts can affect our feelings that then affect our actions, it can help us to break free. Just to say, you know what? Just say I'm a black male, right? Being a
Yes.
black male, I don't need to go off the social norm script. It doesn't mean that there isn't. I don't have my family. I don't have happiness. What it means is that I don't have to interact the way people think I have to interact. I don't have to look
Yes.
the way people think I need to look. Even having dreads, I remember I started my dreads in college, going out of my masters, and people said, "Oh, you
Wow.
can't go in that space like that. You got to cut those. You can't even start it. That's that look a little too." Never had any issue. I'm talking never once have I had an issue
Wow.
in any setting. It's nothing that anyone brought up. A job never brought it up. But the community that was speaking to me, that subgroup that was speaking to me, was worried about it, but have they ever been there? Right?
Of
Have
course
they
not.
experienced it? Some may not. Some people may have their own experiences, but it's kind of like what happens. You can tell somebody yes 1,000 times, but they remember one no. You know,
Oh, well, hold on. Try
yeah,
that again. You got
yeah.
to say that.
You
You
could
got to
tell
say it one more time.
you could tell people yes 1,000 times, but they remember the one no. Right. So
Wow.
that's it can happen the same way mentally and emotionally. You can go through places and have fun and have good interactions and meet people of different cultures, people that don't judge you, but that can happen one time all it take. Now it reaffirms the negative belief that you have about yourself.
You
And
have reaffirmed the negative belief. And, some people theologically and hermeneutically will call that the spirit of rejection.
yeah. Mm,
Living in a place of rejection,
yeah.
believing that you've already lost,
Yeah.
or that your last loss determines your now.
Right.
Um, and so I mean, man, so we've
We've
had a
had a
feast
feast. Oh yeah.
on here. Um, I'm going to drop this final question. And I'm just, man,
Mm.
I'm eternally grateful. Let's drop this last one. Finally, what message would you share directly with I'm going to say any man listening who may be struggling but hesitant to get help, um, or taking the first step, um, that is crucial.
Yeah, what I would share is something that one of my mentors taught me is when when we're creating value and we're giving and we're paying our dues forward and we're trying to be good people on this earth. One thing that we forget to do is put ourselves on the budget. We don't.
Mm,
So just as anyone else is valuable, treat yourself treat people how you would treat yourself. Treat yourself how you would treat others if you're not yet there yet. Understand that you're important enough to put yourself on that list, to take a step to communicate with someone. And sometimes it's not speaking to someone because something's broken. It's not for them to fix anything.
mhm.
But it's like having a pocket full of keys and you don't know which door the key opens. Sometimes you just have to take a step back and go to the key maker. Some you may not know the key maker, but you may know someone,
Listen,
you know, that knows what one of the doors is for, and one of the keys are for. And that's all you got. Just start slow. You don't, they say Rome wasn't built in a day. So start slow. Take your time. Speak to people that care about you, that love you, and understand that you can't help anyone if you can't help yourself. And just because it's hard and it's tough and it's rough and people don't understand, that's a I always recommend to people, hey, even the best surgeon, the best doctor, they need surgeons and they need doctors when they're sick. No one can perform surgery on themselves. So it doesn't matter how skilled you are, how strong you are. There's people that can help. There's services, mental health services. I know it's a lot of stigmas that can be there. There's spiritual services that we have community spiritual leaders, and I know it can be sometimes it can be nervous and scary to step out there. But start with your core people, start with your friends, start with your family, and just ask them. Sometimes
mm,
it's easier for people to think about services and help for you than it is for you to think about yourself when you're in that space. It's like it's things we do for people that we don't do for ourselves. We may be laying in bed tired and sleepy, and someone call us, "Hey, I need your help." And we pop out of bed with energy because
yeah.
because now we're giving something. It's like, oh, it's worth it. Even though we're worth it, sometimes we'll lay in bed a little longer if it's just for us. When it's for other people, we get up and get moving. So build that team, build that support. It's much more sufficient to live in groups than to live by yourself.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, listen, Jamal, I want to thank you once again. Where, if people want to follow you, where can they follow you?
Well, I have on the counseling side, I have my psychology today. If you're looking for counseling, you can find me on psychology today. I have Instagram. I'm getting more active on Instagram. just to kind of spread some more messages on there as well. And I would say really, I have my private practice that I run as well. Right now, I'm on a practice called Melton Counseling, Melton Counseling,
Hmm.
but I am moving into an individual side, so that would be within the next month and a half. So I would have to update on that. Maybe Nesbitt Counseling. So just look out for that. But really, my social media, you can just type my name in, Jamal Nesbitt, and that's kind of where I try to connect more and be more vocal.
Yes, yes. Well, listen, I'm so grateful for you, and many people don't know that photo everybody's liking on Facebook, not on my Instagram. They kind of like it, but that when they like on Facebook so much,
Yeah.
this is the photographer. But anyway, no. But once again, we just thank you for logging on. We're on here. I'm not setting the actual day. Our next one is with the CEO and executive director of the National Museum of African American Music. He has a very interesting story about mental health,
Mm.
and I'm excited to share it with him. He's been a great mentor, and happy to have him. This is Byron Harvey's Beloved Community page. You can follow us. And if you're on YouTube, make sure you subscribe and like. Leave a comment in the comment section. We are the space that demonstrates vulnerability, different perspectives, advocates for change, and ultimately benefiting God's people. We pray that you have a blessed day, and thank you once again for joining in. And you all have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Yeah.